Ready or not, the midterm elections less than 8 months away, and last week in a race many say could be a bellwether for the country, a Republican won a special congressional election in Florida in a race dominated by health care reform and the sagging popularity of one President Obama. Now, that win has some Democrats in panic mode. A lot say there's a lot more that went into that race than just the final result here. And the party, some worry, on the Democratic side, could be positioned for big losses in November. And for more, we're very pleased to be joined right now by Congressman Jim Hines, who represents Connecticut's 4th District in the House. Congressman, thanks a lot for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Richard. Great to be back.
You know, in January, I know you sat down with a lot of your constituents who fit under the description of the long-term unemployed. You probably have seen a lot of the discourse from both a colleague of yours in the House, Paul Ryan, talking about school lunches, and other leading Republicans, one who started this mantra, well, if you don't want to be poor, stop being poor, in effect. Talk about what you learned from some of those people, if they want to be in the situation that they're in, if they're shiftless or whatever, and what are some of the realities that maybe some of those folks in Washington could have learned if they sat with you?
Yeah, you know, what we see coming out of the right wing right now, this notion that if you're unemployed or that if you're poor, it's your fault and you're not deserving of help from the government or from anybody else, is just frankly a really disturbing, unethical, and frankly un-American notion. Now, does that mean that all social programs, whether they're food stamps or educational assistance or Head Start, are perfect? Absolutely not. But they are going a long way to taking people who in many cases start out with dramatic disadvantages and actually giving them a shot.
Many people may not know, but you're the National Finance Chair for the DCCC. Basically, among your duties is to get money to candidates here, and obviously this midterm election season. There's been a lot of chatter, some even on the record, but a lot behind closed doors, that Democrats are real worried that the Obama effect is going to drag them down. I'm not asking you to put names to it, but how much concern and even anger is there on some of your colleagues, Democrats in the House, that Obamacare and the president are more of a net negative than anything else between now and November?
Well, look, there's no way around the fact that a president with lower approval ratings doesn't help. Now, you know, we are still months and months away from the November elections, and there's a political lifetime between now and November when the ballots are cast. So it's a little silly to speculate about where the president will be or where the economy will be or how people will be thinking about the Affordable Care Act. I will make a couple of points though, which is, the folks who think they're going to run strong on the Affordable Care Act are contending with the fact that this very day thousands of Americans will get health insurance through healthcare.gov. And yes, it was a disastrous rollout, very badly hurt the president and the Democrats, but it has largely been fixed, and we're at a point now where we've seen some 4 or 5 million Americans sign up for health care. You know, as we get closer and closer to November, that number of millions of Americans that the ACA has positively touched will go up. Can I tell you that it's going to be an asset for people running for re-election in November? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that reality will begin to intrude as more and more people benefit.
You're in one of those areas is considered a swing district historically, at least. Would you want the president campaigning in the 4th District for you, or would that bring you more agita than it would benefit?
Well, I'll make an obvious point, which is that I hope the president doesn't have to campaign anywhere in Connecticut, because we've actually got fights in geography that, speaking politically, is much more challenging than it is in New England. We've got Senate races that are very, very close in places like Louisiana and North Carolina, and I frankly hope we don't come to a point where the president needs to start thinking about spending time in places like Connecticut. That my seat was traditionally Republican for a very long time, but I've been able to hold it now for 5 years, and we just hope that this is not one of those seats that really comes onto the battlefield.
You know, finally, Congressman, I spoke to some of your colleagues who, off the record, have said, you know, it's one thing, it's a tough climate historically, the midterms, the second year for the president, it's tough. Usually the out party or the in party will lose 30 seats. But what makes it harder for them is that this third-party money, this outside funding, that they're getting crushed in some of these districts where these groups are spending as much as $1 million in these House seats. And they said, where's it coming from our side? Now, Organizing for America, they got a lot of money, they got a lot of names, etc. Are you hoping the White House starts telling some of these groups and some of this money on the outside, hey, you know what? It can work both ways. When's it going to start spending money for Democrats, especially in these tough seats?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, speaking as an elected official in this republic, I will tell you that I hope we can someday make some progress to getting back to an electoral system which is not, in which millions of dollars flowing from unidentified sources don't sway Senate and House races. I mean, the fact that we are where we are today, and I recognize the irony and perhaps even the hypocrisy of saying this as a national finance chair of the DCCC. We have a set of rules now which is just unfortunately not consistent with what most of us would hope a democracy would be, and I look forward to the day when there's a lot less money in the system. That said, your point is exactly right. When you have a couple of brothers based in Kansas who will happily write tens of millions of dollars of checks around the country. The individual fundraising efforts of a candidate or even of a party committee like the DCCC can easily be swamped. Look at the race down in Florida, which Alex Sink narrowly lost, right? The spending that the candidates themselves did was relatively insignificant compared to the incredible amounts of outside money that came in to influence that race. So yes, the answer is we all worry about the tidal waves of money that comes from very wealthy individuals, corporations, wherever it may come from, what that could mean for the outcomes of close races around the country.
Hey, Congressman, as always, I really do appreciate a few. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Richard.
I like Jim, and we're making jokes, but that's a tough gig, man. Working the phones here, trying to raise money. But you could read between the lines here. He's pretty clear that there's third-party money coming out the ears on the Republican side. Where is it on the Democratic side? What happened to the president's got this whole infrastructure for Organizing for America. It's a legitimate point. If I'm a Democrat running a tough district and the president's trying to get me to, I'm in trouble in part because of Obamacare and its rollout. The least he should do is turn his donor base here, especially the high rollers, to start either getting behind this program so I don't have to spend money doing it. It's a legitimate point, don't you think?
It absolutely is. A lot of the third-party money comes from labor unions, which are facing their own extreme difficulties, I think unfairly, with efforts like we saw in Wisconsin and other initiatives that are funded, again, by these incredibly wealthy third-party donors on the Republican side. Emily's List and Planned Parenthood are some of the bigger ones that have very sophisticated targeting and email databases. I know when Emily's List sends a note, oftentimes I give, just based on that email. But it should be more, and the president's team should turn it on more. And it's a lot harder doing the DCCC than it is doing the Democratic Senate side, because the money's bigger. You don't have like school board candidates running for U.S. Senate right away where they can run for Congress and they have their own followings, and it's a tough gig.
But if you had your hand on the tap of a lot of Democratic money, why would you really invest it in a congressional race right now, especially in a possibly a losing congressional race? Nobody really thinks that the House is going to go back to Democratic control this go around. Not a single poll, not a single strategy has shown that the Democrats have any shot at winning back the House. Why wouldn't you husband your resources and save them for the Senate campaign or save them for the presidential race in 2016?
We're not even seeing it there, though, Andrew. To your point, maybe it's a good strategic one to save the money for that. Think about it. We sat around this table through a bunch of different election cycles, and what's the one commonality, I was thinking about this, that the losing side always has? They're never for anything. They're always against something. What are the Democrats for this year? Now, I thought they had one winning issue if they wanted to do it, which is, okay, the other guys are saying if you don't want to be poor, stop being poor, right? And they're saying they want to cut food stamps, they want to cut unemployment insurance, and the public buys it, right? You could make that into a narrative you can sell. I'm not saying it's the best one, but it's better than nothing. And they haven't really come in to vote for us because we're for this instead of they're crazy, I think that's part of the problem. They haven't figured out what their bumper sticker, what their platform is.
They actually,
they're afraid
I find
of
it amazing.
Obamacare.
Every time we run a national poll, more people are with the Democrats on the issues as you go issue by issue, and an overwhelming majority of those issues than they are with the Republicans. But you're right, figuring out how to sell it hasn't really helped. And part of the problem is that you don't have anybody at the top. Obama's too toxic in too many parts of the country. He'd be the ideal salesman, and he still is in a lot of ways, but you can't bring him out to the areas where you've got swing districts. Hillary Clinton's not in the game
Hey,
yet.
listen, you heard the congressman. I asked him, would you want the president to come to the 4th District in Connecticut, right? And he didn't say yes. He didn't say no, but he avoided the question.
But he want Bill
Congress is
Clinton
so
there in a
different.
heartbeat.
He would have Bill Clinton there in a heartbeat. Decades and decades of reapportionment have made so few seats truly competitive now, absent a watershed event like we saw with Obamacare when the Republicans took the House, like Watergate, and like the Bush presidency briefly. But you know, a congressional race, $1.5, $2 million, a statewide race, $20 million, $15 million, $25 million. The numbers are just very, very different.
Tough for the Democrats right now. When the top dog is not doing well in the polls, nobody wants to be, you know,
you get
hi, Mr. President.
Don't you get the
Stay
feel
away
too,
from me,
Dom,
Mr. President.
that Republicans learned their lesson?
Yeah,
We've
they're
seen a few
shutting
votes.
up.
They're shutting up.
They're not
hanging
the
themselves.
nut jobs are not out there talking, giving us a reason to remind us why we should vote against them.
Give them time.
We'll see.
I don't know. I'm with Dom.
See.
They seem to have gotten the message here. Just be quiet. All right. Coming up next, he helped lead the Knicks to their last title. Get ready for this. 41 years ago. 41 years ago in the world's greatest arena. Since then, he's got 11 more titles as a coach here. Now, the question is, can new Knicks president Phil Jackson actually lead the Knicks back to, forget about even the title, how about relevance? We're going to talk about that when we come back. Stay with us.